Hello, welcome to the Bible, K through 12. This is 6th grade Bible, Part D, which is concerned with the books of poetry in the Old Testament. Now, in English, or especially in our grade school, my grade school understanding of poetry, we think of poetry as rhyming. So I must go down to the sea again, to the lonely sea and sky, and all I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by and sky. Rhyme. Hebrew poetry and quite a bit of English poetry doesn't do that. It does have structure, though, that's obviously planned and in some cases very sophisticated. It has assonance, which is repetition of vowel sounds, and alliteration, repetition of consonant sounds. It has parallelisms in which there's an idea and a parallel idea right next to it. It has a very intricate verse structures and so forth. So it's not a matter that these folks were not sophisticated in the building of their poetry. The other thing I need to say is that some of the material that is classified as poetry is not generally thought of as poetry in the English Bible. For example, the book of Job has a great deal of poetry to the point that it is classified with the poetry books. The books of poetry are Job, and Psalms, and Proverbs, and then Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon. I'm going to just give a very quick summary statement about each of these books. The first is Job, which investigates a problem that you find quite a bit in Old Testament literature, and that is, why do the righteous suffer? And so we have a story, but the story is the background for the main thrust, which is thought. It's just long strings of material which people are thinking through some of these problems and issues. Job has some friends, and my comment on that is, with friends like this, who needs enemies? They are not always really very friendly to Job. Job has a complaint that he is speaking to God. And so he is boldly complaining because he is protesting that he is an innocent man, he's a righteous man, and yet he is suffering. He also comes to a point where he is humbled, and that is sort of the conclusion of the book. One feature of Job is that there is an explicit description of the activity of Satan, more so than almost any other book gives us. The book of Psalms is lengthy, 150 Psalms. One of those Psalms is longer than some of the books we have in the Bible, the 119th Psalm. It is personal, which an individual describes his joy, his pain, his relationship with God. It is also national, in which the psalmist speaks for the entire nation. It is historical. It reviews the history of Israel. So it really is both personal and national, and recognizes that there is a consciousness of these people of their national identity. They are expressing that national identity in many of these psalms. It is especially a confession of faith in various circumstances, in pain and sorrow and fear, as well as in joy and triumph. There is always an expression of a faith in the God of Israel. The book of Proverbs is an exploration of wisdom. And it, in some cases, is just very brief statements that are wise, helpful, not particularly connected to the context. And then there are places where there is more extended context that also deals with wisdom. In the early part of the book, there is a sort of a personification of the writer as an older person who has experience and wants to warn a young friend. There's no names given or anything like that. But so this young man, it needs to be clued in about the mistakes that he can make as he grows up into manhood and experiences the things that a young man would experience. There is a marvelous chapter toward the end of the book that I have characterized as not your barefoot and pregnant wifey. That is to say, this is a beautiful picture of what is called a virtuous woman, of a wife and mother, but more than that. And it is rather amazing. We might say how modern it is, how much it has to say about a woman in her wisdom, in her skill, in her virtue, in her loyalty, in her leadership, all of these kinds of things that too often are not recognized in women, and yet this is saying, hey, look around. You're going to find a lot of these women are what are keeping us all together. And so it is an amazing, for its time and its context, an amazing chapter on the virtuous woman. The book of Ecclesiastes, I like the title that one author has given in his book about Ecclesiastes, in which he characterizes it as against the grain. That is to say, the book of Ecclesiastes has a lot to say about wisdom, a lot to say about life, similarly to what and how Proverbs deals with the issues. And yet, Ecclesiastes has a different take on all of this. It looks at life, it looks at how things come out and how we should live, and it doesn't quite parallel or echo what Proverbs would say. For example, Ecclesiastes encourages us to enjoy life, encourages us to work hard, take care of our money, be honorable, and yet also, hey, have a good time. Enjoy God's good creation. So Ecclesiastes has a lot of wisdom, but it takes a very different take than what we find in Proverbs. The last book, the Song of Solomon. I have given it a little epithet, a little title, and it is Love is in the Air. Now, Song of Solomon has been kind of avoided, kind of looked at askance, and it has also kind of been approached from a very, you might say, approach that tries to spiritualize a very, what some people think of as a very unspiritual situation. This is the Song of Solomon, a love story. It's about a man and woman who love each other. And that was embarrassing, evidently, to many people. And so they tried to say, well, this is really about Jesus and the church. This is really about how Jesus loves the church. And it's really not about a man and a woman who love each other. That understanding has kind of been abandoned in the 20th and 21st centuries. People have had the courage to say, well, wait a minute, this is just about a man and woman who love each other. Now, if we want to see and recognize a godly approach to this, if we want to see it as the love of God for his people, of the love of Jesus for the church, and apply it in that way, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and there may be some valid material and understanding that we can gain in that way. But we shouldn't avoid the fact that the Bible recognizes love between men and women. The little statement that Adam gives when he sees Eve for the first time, it is an expression of physical attraction. This is someone that I can grasp and hold to my side forever. And so we need to lighten up a little bit and recognize that there is love all the time in the air when it comes to men and women. Well, those were pretty quick little snippets about the books of poetry. Let me say that when you start delving into it, especially the book of Psalms, you're going to find a huge amount of material. You're going to find a lot of that spiritual stuff that people try to apply in the Song of Solomon. It's there in especially the Psalms. Push yourself, because sometimes you get into some of these chapters and they're really long, and you have to push yourself a little bit, but experience the beauty, the richness, the wisdom of the books of poetry. Thank you for your faithful watching of these videos, and I hope they're helpful to you. And so I hope that you look at the next one as we continue in the Bible, K through 12. Thank you.